So today I'm going to teach you guys how to make the cinnamon sugar churros. They only require a couple simple ingredients, and they are a pretty simple recipe. So what you're going to need to make the churros is some sugar, vanilla, 3 eggs, half a cup of unsalted butter, some salt, cinnamon sugar, and if you don't have cinnamon sugar, you can just take sugar and then mix in plain cinnamon with it. Flour, some cooking spray, saran wrap, and a piping bag with a tip on the end of it. And if you don't have a piping bag with a tip, you can just use a ziplock bag and cut off the corner. Alright, so first we're going to add half of a cup of butter. It's just 2 sticks, and make sure it's unsalted butter. We're then going to turn our burner on to medium-high and let the butter melt up a little bit. And then with that, we're going to add a cup of water and a half a teaspoon of salt. And then we're just going to let that boil, and we're going to stir occasionally just so that the butter doesn't burn to the bottom. So it's starting to bubble up a little bit. We're going to wait for it to get to a little bit more of a full boil, but you can see that the bubbles are starting to come up. And then once it gets to a full boil, we're going to remove it from the heat, but keep it in the saucepan because you want what you're mixing in to remain warm. And if you put it into a cold dish, it's not going to mix up as well. So it's gotten to a pretty rapid boil. We're going to turn off our heat, and we're just going to move it over and take it off the heat. So right after I took this off, I also preheated my oven to 350 degrees. Next, we're going to add a cup of all-purpose flour. And I'm only going to add about half of it in, and then we are just going to mix it in. Not with our blender yet, it's just too rough on it. So we're just going to try to incorporate that really well. And it's going to start to look a little bit like mashed potatoes. That's the consistency that you want. And then we'll go ahead and we'll add in the other half. And just mix that in. Again, don't use the mixer yet. It's just too rough, and you want your churros to be nice and airy. You don't want them to be real thick. So once that's well mixed in, it's going to look really starchy and tough. That's really the consistency that you want. And then I have 3 eggs. I poured them all into one bowl, but we're only going to add them in one at a time. So add in your first egg, and then we're going to use our blender on low. And make sure to get all the egg incorporated until you add the next one. And it'll start to look a little bit wet and glossy. That's what you want. And then your third egg, and after it's beat in, you're going to switch your mixer on to high and beat it until it thickens up. And then after you beat it up, it'll look a little bit like pudding now. It's going to eventually get a little thicker, but you do have to mix it more. So if you do have a stand mixer, you might want to use that because your arm can get pretty worn out. So we are then going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. And then we're going to go back to mixing it on a pretty high speed, and it might take a little while, but it will thicken up. And if you think that yours is too mushy, you can add just a little bit extra flour, but only about a half cup or so more. So this is still looking just a little bit thin. I'm going to add about half a cup more flour if needed. I would gradually add it though, so I'm going to add it about 1/4 of a cup at a time. So I have a half cup. I'm just going to add in just a little bit. I'll put the rest to the side in case I need it later. And with this one, start to mix it in a little bit just because you don't want that giant poof ball to come up when you add dry ingredients and then you start mixing it. And I'm going to turn this down back to about a medium. And you can tell it's starting to thicken up. You want it to hold that shape when you pour it out of your piping bag, which I'll show you in a little bit. So it's still not quite thick enough. It does take a lot of mixing. So if the consistency is a little runny, like this is still a little bit runny, I'm going to go ahead and actually just knead the dough. So I'm going to pour just a little bit of flour onto, and we have a laminate surface. If you have tile, I would put something down first. And I'm going to scrape my dough out. So it's pretty thick, but it's not thick and creamy like mashed potato. And then just add a little bit of flour to the top. Spread it on. And then just knead it. So now it's nice and thick. You can actually, pick it up. I'm going to go ahead and transfer it to my piping bag. And then we'll go ahead and we'll pipe them out onto our baking sheet. So I have a 12-inch piping bag. You can get them at most craft stores. If you don't have a piping bag, you can get a ziplock bag and just cut the corner off. And if you don't have a tip, it doesn't matter. So I just use a star-shaped tip that I bought at a cake store. Again, if you don't have a tip, it really doesn't matter that much. So a trick I learned so that you don't ruin your piping bags and you can use them more than once is to pour whatever you have onto a piece of saran wrap and then wrap it up. So spread it out. And you can use like saran wrap or cling wrap. Just don't use press and seal. It just doesn't work as well. So I'm going to get all my dough and make it kind of long. And then spread it out on the saran wrap. And then just kind of wrap it up and twist the edges. And I just kind of spin it around. You can just kind of loop-de-loop or do whatnot with that. So after that's done, you want to take a pair of scissors and then just snip the edge off. And then get your piping bag and you just slide the whole thing in it. And then just kind of push it down and then it'll start to bubble. And then you just kind of twist at the top. And you do have to squeeze hard, but it does come out. So it's starting to pop out. So then you have your cookie sheet. I pre-greased it. I just use vegetable oil, cook and spray. I'm sure most of you have that just in your house. And then we're going to pipe a straight line from up to down or down to up, it doesn't matter. And that is going to be our churro. So after we have them all piped out, you're going to spray them again with cooking oil. You want to get them real nice and done. And then I have half a cup of cinnamon sugar. If you don't want to buy the big packs of cinnamon sugar, just get half a cup of sugar and dump some cinnamon in it. So I have this on a spoon and I am just going to very graciously dump it all over. And if you want to first pipe these onto something, the sugar does tend to kind of stick to the pan when it's in the oven. So if you want to be pouring the sugar on before you put them on the cooking pan, you can. Personally, I don't really see a huge difference, but I know some people don't like to ruin their nice cooking sheets. Once you get one side done, you're just going to kind of flip them around. Do the same thing. And then I just kind of flip them back around, just so that those top lines look real pretty when you get them out. And you can stretch them out if you want to. And then you can just collect the sugar from the side and pick it up. So then you're going to put these all in the oven in the middle rack for about 15 to 20 minutes on 350 degrees. So the great thing with the saran wrap inside of the bag trick is that when you're completely done, you just unroll everything, you grab the saran wrap from the inside and you pull it out, and then you're done. You only have to clean this minorly, and you only have to then clean the tip. So simple as that. So these ended up baking for about 20 minutes on 350, and they're all done. You can tell they're done because they're kind of nice and hard on the top, and you don't want them in too long or the sugar on the bottom is going to burn. So I'm just going to take them off because they're still hot. So now we are all done our beautiful churros. If you like this video, go ahead and hit my subscribe button. I'll do a lot of videos on baking and everything like that. I absolutely love sweets. And then if you have any questions, just let me know. You can send me a message or leave a comment, and hit your like button. Thank you so much.